This is A Silent War Within, the podcast dedicated to confronting the unseen mental health battles carried by our first responder and healthcare heroes. This show is about real stories, real struggles, and real ways to survive the storm and come out stronger on the other side. For too long, stigma has kept you silent, but this is your space to bravely break that silence, share vital insights, and build a community where your well-being truly comes first, because your service deserves unwavering support.
Hey everybody, welcome to A Silent War Within. This is MaKayla, not Kevin. Kevin is still out. I know y'all are so eager for him to return, but you'll have to deal with me a little bit longer. Kevin's still doing physical therapy, but he should be back with us shortly. Today we're joined by Jason M. Jason M., how are you today?
Blessed. How are you?
Jason, I honestly think you're better looking than Kevin. So I'm really glad. I'm really glad it's you, not Kevin. He's going to be editing this, so he'll see that.
Well,
Prettier face to look at.
To his credit, you guys are family. So
That's true. That's true. And then we are also joined by the amazing Travis Ivey. How are you today?
Doing well. How are you?
Perfect. I'm so glad to have you here.
I'm glad to finally be here.
Blown up on social media, and I'm so
Thank you.
glad that we are getting to talk with you today.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to read your intro. And everybody, it's a little long, so just hang out with me, okay? He has some impressive stuff we've got to talk about.
He's an accomplished man.
I know. All right, today we are joined by a guest who has spent over 3 decades on the front line of emergency services. He has served as a firefighter, paramedic, and operational leader, and he just retired as an EMS District Chief in a hospital-based system in South Carolina. Over his 30-year career, he has responded to thousands of calls ranging from just routine emergencies to high-stress critical incidents. Eventually, the weight of those experiences forced him to confront his own personal cost of the job and begin his own healing journey. The profound personal transformation led him to write After the Sirens, Finding Grace in the Quiet, a book dedicated to helping first responders navigate trauma, identity, and rebuild after years in the field. Today, his mission has grown into a powerful platform called Between the Tones, which focuses on life after the call and who first responders are outside the uniform. He's also developing the DRIFT system to help individuals and organizations understand the neurological realities of trauma and intentionally building resilience. Alongside his wife, Morgan, a longtime 911 dispatcher, he is also pioneering resources to support first responders, their families, and children. Travis, that's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a lot when you said it.
I know you've done a lot over your 30-year history. So just dive right in. Tell us what made you want to become an EMS paramedic? How did you meet your wife? All of those things, your life story.
Boy, how I got into this. You know, growing up, my dad was a cop. I'm the son of a homicide detective. Funny story, when I was a teenager and I would get in trouble, I didn't get questioned by a normal parent. I got questioned by a homicide detective. Your eye twitched a little different when I asked you that question. You're telling the story. But growing up, dad was a police officer. My thing was, I'm going to date myself a little bit. Emergency, the TV show. I always thought it was cool to watch Johnny and Roy, pop the D50, with the toxic spill going on behind them. And that was kind of my hook. I thought that's cool. I want to do that. In high school, became a volunteer fireman. 20 years old, I believe. Got hired at a city fire department. Worked there for about 8-9 years. Felt like full-time church work was the next step for me. So stepped away from all of this for about 8 years. Eventually came back to it when my season in full-time church work was over. Went back to fire and EMS because that's what I knew. It was, okay, I need a job. I can do this. I used to do this. So jumped back into it. Back then in the day, EMTs, I think I was making $9.75 an hour. We didn't make much.
Still today.
Yeah, still today. It's pretty bad. My paramedic partner at the time, I think he was making $2 an hour more than I was. And I thought, well, $2 an hour is $2 an hour. So I went to paramedic school. kind of out of self-preservation. I was living in Savannah, Georgia at the time, wound up coming back home. I live in a little town called Belmont outside of Charlotte. Got back into fire service, and believe it or not, found there was a way that I could make more money as a paramedic than riding the fire truck. So made that transition, been a truck paramedic ever since. How I met my wife.
These are my favorite stories.
You know, the funny thing, I actually had her write a chapter in the book, Stories from Home. I do think the 911 dispatchers are an absolute forgotten piece of the mental health and the toll this takes. That when that phone rings and it's a family and their world is absolutely falling apart, they've got anywhere from 30 to 45 seconds to get some basic information out of them, get them calmed down enough to get some resources started. And then when emergency crews show up on scene, they hang up the phone. And then they have to go back to answering that phone again. Well, Morgan was working in the same county that I was working in, and I've not always been this guy. There was a very long season where I was pretty much an ass. I was angry. I was mad at the world, and it came out in so much of how I did my job. Morgan couldn't stand me. She thought I was a big old butthole, and I thought she was a pretty big pain too on the radio. And I had gotten out of a bad relationship and just kind of was in there one night talking to my resource controller, and she just asked, "Hey, how are you doing?" And that kind of started a conversation, and here we are over 3 years, and it's kind of been me and her.
It's awesome. You know, I very similar in our career paths. For me, I've been in career fire for 28 years. With my volunteer time, probably 32 years. During that time, part-time 911 dispatcher for 15 years. So I will echo what you said. The 911 dispatcher is probably the most undervalued, underappreciated person in the chain of people
Absolutely.
that mitigate an emergency from beginning to end.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so you said something in there too that really drew piqued my curiosity. I'll confess, I hadn't quite followed you yet on social media. We just hadn't crossed the algorithm hadn't put you in front of me yet. I'm convinced it will now because I followed you, because I jumped in there today in prepping for the show, and I wanted to do some research, and you said something on a couple of videos, or one video particularly, that I would say probably went viral comparatively to some of the other posts that you have, right, as a small content creator. And I'm going to read what you said. Our family doesn't sign up for this, but they deal with what the job does to us, and they get what's left. Man, for me, that just really resonated. Moment of vulnerability for me. I was very much in a similar place as you were when you described yourself as an angry individual, just mad at the world and how you were showing up. My wake up call was coming home from a shift in the morning, and I live on a split level, so I walk through the front door, and I'm at the bottom of the steps. And as I walk through the front door, I can audibly and I could feel an environment that was rich in love and excitement. I could hear the kids giggling and having fun, getting ready for their day. And then I just sat there and absorbed that for about 20 or 30 seconds before they realized I was home. And the instant they realized that I was home, the atmosphere shifted. I could feel it get tense. I could feel they were on edge. I could feel the anxiety building as they kind of went hushed voices, almost a little bit of fear as they questioned which version of daddy is coming home today. So I think you nailed that right on the head, man. Our families get the brunt end of it, and they didn't necessarily always sign up for it. So talk a little bit more about that with me.
So I was watching a TikTok a couple weeks ago, and it was something that resonated with me. And it was this fire chief, and he was on a show, and he was talking about your spouse. And if you're in emergency services, but your spouse is not, the job is always the mistress. The job is always going to get what's first. And far too many times, we've got absolutely nothing left. And again, I grew up in a homicide cop's home. And there were times that dad would come home. All I wanted was just, hey, to hang out with dad. Dad's been busy at work. I want to hang out with dad, spend time with dad. Dad come in the door, bite my head off, snap at me. The whole atmosphere in the house changes, as you were talking about. And I started thinking, well, what did I do? I did something wrong. When in fact, you find out a couple days later on the news that something come out, my dad had worked a really bad case. My dad had worked a really, worked something really, really challenging. And Morgan kind of pointed this out to me about a year ago. Because Morgan was able to leave the 911 side. She now works for the airport in their airport operations center. Shout out to my wife, who got notified today that she got a promotion as a supervisor. So kudos to her. But she pointed out, even after she had left the 911 side, she told me, she said, without you even telling me, I can tell if you've ran a pediatric call. And I said, well, how do you do that? And she said, because you're distant with Olivia. She said, you come home and Olivia wants to spend time with you. You're short with her. You're distant. You're disconnected. And it takes you several days. Morgan has a huge passion for the kids who are involved in all of this. And, as I said, what you see today is not who I was 10 years ago. Easy. I am living proof of way more grace than I ever thought I deserved. Before I really started this journey that I've been on, I really didn't have a relationship with my kids. My daughter's 29, Hannah, and Caden will be 24 Sunday. Hannah didn't really have much to do with me. And Caden, I guess he was tolerating it. But I've seen, as I've really worked really hard on me and the things that I didn't want to deal with, but the things I needed to face, there's been a healing and a restoration in that relationship. And it's been a work in progress, and it's still a work in progress. But I think for so many who are out there, your spouse and your kids, they didn't sign up for this job. You did. And they do get what's left over. And I think a big question is how do you fix that?
That's where I was going next. Honestly, it wasn't on my script, but as we talk through this issue, man, I think the last thing I want to do as an individual is be somebody that just talks about an issue without finding a solution for it. Right. So what worked for you?
I think one thing that worked for me is yes, I was very fortunate. Now, again, I talk about it in the book. I'm very honest about how I have blown things up in my personal life. The kid's mom, my first wife, not a first responder, didn't really understand that world. I do think it is different with Morgan, who is from that world. She understands that, but we talk in a relationship, we talk about everything, but sometimes talk about nothing. And you think you're protecting your family by, well, I don't want to sit down and tell my husband or tell my wife about the day that I've struggled with. They won't understand it. I think you're minimizing their value and their impact into your relationship. They may not completely understand everything you saw or that you had to do, but they can listen.
Yeah, and I think that's important. To me, that's a great first starting point. Similarly, I went through years of therapy, a lot of hard work, a lot of internal work, clearing up some of the things that were holding me back and that trauma. And one of the first things I learned in my relationship with my wife as I started doing that internal hard work was that she doesn't necessarily need to know all the gory details. Right. But I can share my emotions. I can share my feelings. I can share some of what I saw, some of what I experienced, and how I'm struggling now. And then the next thing for me was just an understanding, like you talked about it. Your wife can look at you and just know when you had a pediatric call, because she knows you, that you guys have that level of intimacy in the relationship that she just knows you. Very similarly, we just hit a point where my wife was like, okay, I know which version of dad came home, but my husband is walking through the door and I'm going to give him some space. As I started doing the work on myself and realizing how that was impacting her and the kids, like I started that conversation with her, because sometimes we're triggered out in public. I don't like the word triggered, but activated. I don't know what the word is there, but I don't like the word triggered. But sometimes we're that PTS and those symptoms and anxiety, all those things sometimes just present themselves at the least opportune moments when you're out in public. Something, a smell, a sight, a sound, whatever. And in those moments, when I would instinctively pull away, I learned to just communicate to her just with either a look or a nod or a one-word sentence like, hey, I need a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And she, over the years, to her credit, has just reached a point where she's like, hey, I understand that. I don't understand it because she hasn't lived it, but I understand where you're at. And because I love you, I'm going to give you that space because I want the best version of you.
Yeah. And I think I think there's that level of you protect your spouse protects you. You know, it's the king protects the queen protects the king. And it's that first step is absolutely recognizing and also being willing to listen. A lot of people who are first responders, we don't like to listen, and we completely sure do not like to be told when we're wrong.
No, we are the problem solvers, so we can't possibly be the problem, right?
Absolutely. And you know what? I think we convince ourselves of that in retrospect, we're solving chaos for everybody else, that we completely ignore our own chaos. But one of the things you talked about of doing the hard work, I think one thing is I've always said, you get out of therapy what you put into it. If you go in there and blow smoke with your therapist, you're not going to get very far. But there comes a realness with true therapy of where you've got to get really, really honest.
That's why it's the hard work, because we don't want to be honest with ourselves, because we know unconsciously, subconsciously, we know what's stored under there.
We know the dirt.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah. We know the dirt. It's easier for us to go and help whoever. It doesn't matter what they've done or who they are or any of that stuff, but we struggle to give our own self grace.
Man.
Because we see our faults, we see our mistakes, we see the things that we blew up, all the woulda, shoulda, coulda of looking at life in the rearview mirror. And one of the biggest things is it's got to start with, you got to give yourself some grace to just be human.
I agree. I think
there was only one.
Go ahead.
There was only one perfect person. We're not called to be perfect.
That's right. And me and Jason just interviewed a psychotherapist who deals exclusively with first responders, Jennifer. Her episode will come out right before yours, the week before yours. So if y'all are listening to this in real time, live, just go back and listen to the episode we did with Jennifer. She's great. And basically we talked about how she has to break through the shell of first responders. And for people who take care of people all the time, they're very resilient, or I guess stubborn to therapy for their own self. But she says how she breaks through that barrier is she goes to the firehouses and she says, this is how you help your coworker struggling. And she said when she finally broke it down like that, because we're all helpers, when she finally broke it down like that, people started to finally realize, okay, I can help myself with this information. So I think that's really important too, especially with how stubborn we all are. Fire, EMS, dispatchers, nurses.
Yeah.
So
yeah. One of the first things I learned in my coaching training was that when you're a part of the problem, you can't be a part of the solution. So understanding that we have a problem, that we're struggling with something, not necessarily a problem, but that we're struggling with something, or that we're in a season of struggle, is to recognize that it's there and then to reach out and ask for help, and that it's okay to ask our spouse, our significant other, for help, and that quiet, calm voice in the dark, because you're right. Our role is to protect her and her role is to protect us, or vice versa if you're listening to this and you're a female. Yep. That's what the good Lord created it to be. So switch gears for just a second. You've, over a 30-year career, you've seen thousands of calls. I'm curious for your perspective on what the early days in EMS and fire look like compared to your current perspective as a leader that's shaping the next generation.
So,
Freshly retired leader.
Yes.
yes.
Still there. You're still leading though, because you've got the book and you've got the platform. That I would argue you're definitely retired from that. I don't like the word retire. I think you've sunsetted into the next stage of life. I think we all still see you as a leader in the industry. So,
well, thank you.
I'm curious what your perspective is on the early days versus today.
So early days, I think in the early days, anybody that's just started out in this, or anybody that has done this for any length of time, if you think back to your early days, there was a lot of excitement. You get to get on the truck with the blinky lights and the woody whoops, and you get to go to all this stuff, but you're terrified because you know what you don't know. I remember years and years ago, I went to it was in the early 90s. I went to a hazmat technician school, and it was a 2-week class. It was awful, and stopped back by the station to drop off some equipment, and I was talking to the captain at the station. We were talking about the class, and he was asking me, he said, so what did you learn? I said, I learned that I know just enough to be really dangerous.
Just the fire service in general, I think.
That is the fire service. So there was that fear, but there was also that excitement. I had seen and experienced death in the job early. Also knew that, I hate to use the word, well, that's the reality of the job. But no, the reality is none of us were created or designed to see the stuff that we see and deal with and go through on a daily basis. Transitioned toward the end of my career as a supervisor who had 28, 29 full-time people, 10 or 12 part-time people, 13 trucks on the road at night. I was still scared. I was scared for my people, because if you do this job long enough, you're going to know people that lost the fight with themselves, and worried for my people. I come up in a generation of, hey, that's part of the job. Get over it. To what I'm scared of now is what is currently going on across all disciplines of emergency services. Is you've got so many organizations and services that are, well, let's just ignore it. Yeah. Let's ignore that Travis and his crew had a bad call, because if we ignore it, we're not accountable to it. If we ignore it, we're not responsible for it. I'd almost rather have the older generation, because at least in that, somebody was acknowledging.
Yeah.
I wish somebody had told me 30 years ago that you are the most important patient you will ever treat. And you got to take care of you. You got to put you first. I encourage my people, take your time. If I had crews, I've been the paramedic that has had the pediatric death that was at the hospital and didn't even get enough time to process what I had seen, because my patient was literally the same age as my son, and being told, we need you to go run more calls, and not even being able to process it. When I became a supervisor, I was like, I am never doing this to people. If we need to go sit at Waffle House and I need to take you out of service, I'll take you out of service.
I'm curious, as a supervisor in that role, that's a good point. What do you do with the guy? Because that's a two-way street. Sometimes pulling a guy off the truck and out of the station to give him the night off to go home to his kids can be worse than staying at work, finishing the shift, processing it a little bit there with the guys. Where's the balance there?
I think the balance first and foremost starts is if
I don't want to steal your answer, but we just had a conversation about this. Like, know your people. I think that should be
100%.
Yeah, you need to know your people. If you're a supervisor and you know how many times you've written an employee up, but you can't tell me anything about them that has nothing to do with the job, then you're the problem. And you have no business. Prime example. It happened probably 2 months before I retired. I had a crew. They go out on a call. They're on the call and they key up and they ask for police, emergency traffic. And I'm sitting in the office and I'm like, something's just not right. And then it was like a minute later, they're calling back asking to attach me to the call. And at this point, I'm like, this is one of my seasoned providers that if they're asking for help, man, we should have got people going yesterday. Still nothing. Then they key up on the radio and ask for an ETA on police. And she started crying on the radio. And she said, the patient is attacking. I set off all the triggers on the speed alerts in our vehicle. I had all. So when I got there, they're physically okay. Emotionally, not so much. I took them completely out of service for the rest of the night. But because I knew that crew, I talked to them. And one of them was like, well, I just want to go home. And I'm like, okay, well, I know this provider. And I said, are you sure that going home is the best option? Like, look, you can stay here. We will continue to pay you. You can hang out with your partner. Y'all can work on call reports. You can watch TV. You can play on your phone. I don't care. I think it comes back to knowing your people.
Yeah, and I would say, and a conversation like you just alluded to, right? It's knowing your people and then having that conversation. Hey, what do you think is best for you? Here's my thoughts. Let's come to a decision on which is the best path forward.
And I even talk about my own life. Day before Father's Day last year, ran probably hands down the worst call I've ever ran. I talk about it a little bit, and actually I talk about it in the book. But I called my resource controller, and I'm like, dude, I can't do this anymore. Like, dude, I cannot be like, I can't run any more pediatric calls. I can't take this. And I started crying, and he's like, dude, just one step at a time, one step at a time, one step at a time. And he asked me, he said, do you want me to call Morgan? Nope. She's asleep. She's got to work tonight. Don't want to bother her. I'll call her after this is over. All right, Chief. That knowing your people, I think it's a two-way street.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He picked up the phone and called Morgan. And he's like, you need to understand what your husband's going to. My wife, in turn, called my therapist. I mean, like, I've been that open and transparent. Like, my wife has access to my therapist that if she sees something that's been going on with me, that she can pick up the phone and call Aaron and message Aaron. We get the patient to the hospital. And as we are moving the patient over, my phone dings on my watch. And as I'm moving the patient, it rotated to where I could see it, and it was Morgan. And it was a message that said, I am so sorry. I love you. I get done, had my moment, big moment, and I called her. And she said, I'm on my way to get you. She came to work and picked me up. I left my truck there for 3 days. I truly did not know if I was even going to go back to this. But I think it gets back to, just because you put on the white shirt, just because you're in a leadership role, no, you're not necessarily taking care of the patients in the street, but your patients are now the ones who are showing up every day and they're clocking in. And if you're not taking care of them, you're not doing your job.
Yeah. And that kind of goes right into the next question that was on my list was that the moment in your life that you realized that when just getting the job done was not good enough anymore, you had to take care of yourself?
No, back to one of the things early that Jason was talking about doing the hard work.
Mm-hmm.
We identify with so many things of, well, I'm a paramedic. Well, I'm a fireman. I'm a police officer. I'm a dispatcher, whatever. I'm a dad. I'm a son. I'm a husband. That's what you do. It's not necessarily who you are. And part of that healing journey is finding your self-worth, finding your self-value, that realize that I'm enough in here, that I was created for a purpose and created enough inside of me to handle whatever life presents or whatever life puts in front of me. But I think that also ties back into grace, forgiveness. Yeah. We got to forgive ourselves for a lot of things that we have individually done.
So looking back, can you pinpoint a moment
Yeah.
where you're like, this is it?
Yeah. Yeah. I had been in a really bad relationship and things had just gotten to a point. I just left my house, just started driving. At that time, was barely speaking to my kids, didn't really have a connection or, had a strained relationship with my parents. And I'm driving around that evening. I was supposed to go to work. I finally called out of work and I pulled up at my parents' house and I called and my mom answered and I said, "Where are you?" "Well, we're at home. What's wrong?" And I said, "Open the garage door." That was the moment that I was like, I've blown up so much of my life. I've had failed relationship after failed relationship because I had gotten into a season that where if I left work, my phone didn't ring. Nobody called, reach out, check on me. And that was the moment that the very first time I walked into a counseling session, I told the lady, I said, "I don't know what I got to do, but I cannot live like this anymore. I have lived this way for 40 some years. I've blown up relationships. I've blown up anything and everything that I possibly could, mad at the world. Something's got to give. I'll do whatever I have to do." But I took it as a checklist because that's what we do as paramedics and firefighters and police officers. It's a protocol. It's a checklist. And I'm like, I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this. Little did I know.
Therapy, check one.
Yes, I go to therapy every week, but it was in that moment that things started really changing for me. Then you transition 2 years and I'm having a conversation with both of my kids, adult kids. We have 3. So Olivia's 10 and we'll talk about her in a little bit. But I remember having conversations with Hannah and Caden. And Hannah's like, "Dad, you're wasting your time." She's like, "You're still talking about the stuff from 2 years ago. You're still rehashing the same dirt." I'm like, okay, that's how I get hooked up with Aaron and Rock of Refuge and somebody that specializes with a first responder that knows how to target the first responder. That was the moment that I really started realizing that this is taking way too much of a toll on me.
Yeah. And after first responders, they see all this trauma and they go home, that's when the really scary part begins. Even in the title of your book, After the Sirens, finding the grace in the quiet. Talk to us about why that quiet moment after you get home by yourself is so dangerous.
I describe it this way in the book. I describe being a first responder as it's like Alice in Wonderland. Everybody that starts out in this career, you are young, you are innocent, naive to a lot of the realities of what you see in the street. Everything's not portrayed as it is on TV. And then you fall down this rabbit hole. And in that rabbit hole, you start to meet all kinds of weird and crazy things. You see all of these things, and your life has changed forever. And at some point, when you get back out of that hole, you realize that the calm is in the chaos.
Yeah.
And just like Alice, when she got out of the rabbit hole, what'd she want to do? She wanted to go back down in that rabbit hole. We chase the chaos because the chaos is where the quiet and that's where our head and all the noise goes silent because we can focus on this. We can focus on this. We can focus on this.
Tunnel vision.
Well,
It becomes our comfort zone.
Yep.
It becomes our safe place.
Yes.
And we come home and home's supposed to be peaceful. Home is supposed to be that place of solitude. Peace doesn't feel comfortable now.
Yeah.
And so what do? a lot of first responders, they create the chaos at home by blowing up a relationship, having, a disconnected relationship with anybody and everybody. The quiet becomes dangerous when you don't have a plan of, how do I work through this? How do I set with this to tell my body I'm okay? This is okay. For me, it was like just some different grounding techniques.
Right.
The quiet can become extremely scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that certainly in my own life and in other good friends. You're talking about knowing your people. Like I could see this self-sabotage, one in my own life for sure, where we go to create that chaos just because it's what we know. Like you said, it's our safe zone, it's our comfort zone. So kind of leads into the next question, really. Your drift system. Talk to us about that. How does that help us understand what happens to our nervous system when we run call after call?
So the drift system it's kind of an operational framework. And working through my own therapy, working with my therapist and their group, I began to take my own life and went, I got this, I got this, I got this, I got this, because PTSD and the difficulties of the call, when that employee explodes at their supervisor, the signs were there way before they ever got here. So drift is an operational framework that's designed, it's based around pattern recognition, tied to neuroscience. That, like, stage 1 is disconnection, stage 2 reactivity, stage 3 impairment, stage 4 fracture, stage 5 is a tipping point of just ways to look at your people. Again, know your people. A prime example would be a provider comes in, they're just not their self. They're quiet when they were generally outspoken, or they were generally just kind of happy with life. They're not as connected to the crew. Maybe you find them that they used to sit in the crew room. Well, now they're kind of hiding out in the truck. Well, they're already starting to disconnect.
That drift.
That drift.
Drift away. Yeah.
Caught it. They're already
Technical difficulties are my MO. Don't worry.
Sorry. But they're already starting to disconnect. And the goal of a supervisor or any type of leader, the drift system is not just designed for that supervisor. That drift system is designed organizationally. It starts with one, it can expand to many. So you take that employee who's disconnected, or you take stage 2 reactivity. Their tolerance for stuff is a lot lower. Their sarcasm has just really kind of ramped it up. They've got a much shorter fuse. Most people who in fire and EMS, they've already got a short fuse. It's already short enough.
They're leaning into like that mean category, not
Yes.
just sarcastic and like the normal, like little bullying stuff. They're leaning into mean, rude, hateful comments. Yeah.
Absolutely. So if you have leaders that know their people, maybe it's people above that supervisor level that know these same people. They're like, well, wait a minute. Okay. They've now gone from here to they're going here. And drift is not therapy. Drift is not labels. It's just simply pattern recognition that's categorized. I used the START triage system: green, yellow, red. And then the final one is a Mayday. A Mayday is, holy crap, I have a problem. This system does work. It's what I actually used with my people for the last 5 years. I just didn't realize that it had actual name to it until I started actually putting it all together. But this can even be used within a service of where QA people are QA and call reports. Maybe you've got a provider that used to be very thorough and detailed, or you knew this provider doesn't miss stuff. Well, now all of a sudden you start noticing, wait a minute, they're missing stuff. They're missing stuff that I know that they don't ever miss. Okay. Where does that start to follow that somebody else can then say, hey, whoever, are you okay? What's going on?
And then you can put that drift system like into place to like help them or like find some therapy or something for them once you see that's kind of been activated, right?
Yeah, I mean, it may be something as simple as just bring them in, sit down, because it may not have anything to do with the job that's got them drifting. You know, they could be worrying about, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to put food on the table? How do I have enough gas to get home from work? Because when you clock in, you don't get to take all the emotions and the crap that we deal with outside the job and put it in a nice, neat little box. Now you're going to go run calls, and all of that just kind of gets added to the box. And I've had people come and sit down, and I'm like, hey, what's going on with you? Nothing, I'm fine. Now, don't lie to me. Like, you're not yourself. What's going on? And, you know, sometimes it was things that had to do with the job. Sometimes it had absolutely nothing to do with the job. And it's like, okay, how can I help you? What do you need from me? Do I need to relocate you to a slower part of the system? You know, you're one of the few people that's got all the available PTO hours because you don't ever want to take time off. Do you want to put in for some PTO and take a couple of days off? I'll go ahead and approve it now. Figuring out what they need. It's no different than the patient we encounter on the street. When you show up, not every patient that we encounter needs everything in the toolbox. But this toolbox, big as it is, does it have the piece of where you have the provider that comes to you? I had a young man show up to my office one night. He was actually off, and I'm like, man, what in the world are you doing here? Well, we get to talking, and it was apparent. I was like, if I let this kid leave, I don't know that this kid will be alive when the sun comes up. I was like, hey man, hold on, let me go make a phone call. I got to go take his phone call real quick. I called the director of the service at the time, and I said, dude, I don't know where you are, but you need to come back to work. Like, we got a problem. We sat with that young man all night long, talking with him, while there was somebody else in the background making phone calls to find a place that we could get him in some inpatient help. But drift is recognizing the patterns and being able to say, most people are going to come to work, they're green. You got some people that they're kind of yellow. When they start hitting red, you know what? We may need to pull them back a little bit. Maybe we need to say, hey, do we need to let you go, and we need to put you busy for a little while just to let you breathe?
Yeah, that's good stuff. I love it, every bit of it. I think it's tools in the toolbox, right? I'm gonna go off script for this question, but I'm a guest co-host for an undetermined amount of time, so I'm going to maximize my ability to continue asking this question of every person I get to talk to. And you're going to be familiar with this. So in the fire service, we have different levels of expertise, different levels of training. Use your hazmat, for example. When we talked about hazmat earlier, we've got hazmat operations, hazmat awareness, hazmat ops, hazmat tech, hazmat specialist, technician, you know, all those things. We kind of, and same for swift water, ropes, all the different technical things that we do, typically those 4 levels. One of the things that I'm percolating on is in our career, we've been at the awareness level of mental health for years. And I think there's a overall awareness, like, hey, this is a thing. Whether we're ignoring it or whether we're talking about it, it's still the awareness level. To me, the drift system moves us into the operations level. What are some tools that we can begin to mitigate, recognize there's a problem, and isolate, right? That next level. We talked about this a little bit with Jennifer last week, the episode that'll air right before yours, in that I see her, she's definitely that specialist level, right? Somebody that's a trauma-informed therapist is at that mental health specialist level. I'm curious if there's any other ideas or thoughts you have about how to move the overall system, the culture in the first responder family from an awareness level to an operations level.
You know, in talking about the fire service, when there's a tragedy in the fire service and NIOSH gets involved and NIOSH will put out their report, they're pointing out all the things, all the critical failures, all the things, and all the things that need to be improved to hope prevent this stuff. When it comes to mental health, I use NIOSH as an example. We've had the report for decades. Nobody's picked it up. And very few people are trying to actually do something about it. We specialize as first responders of responding to unique emergencies and unique situations with humans who are all uniquely different. Mental health is the exact same way, but yet for whatever reason, we're scared to talk about it. I think for some, that awareness level is you're taught that culturally you're taught to man up. I think there is a massive culture problem of you see a problem, stop and talk about it.
Do you see, bonus question here, because I think you're right. I do see hints that this younger generation of, I call them kids because I'm 53 years old, this younger generation of kids starting up in the field, I feel like they have a deeper, maybe not a deeper, what's the word? Like they have a better understanding of the awareness level than we ever did starting out. Almost like it's more culturally okay to talk about it and have those conversations than it was for our generation.
Yeah, and I think one thing with this generation is I think the older generation needs to come to terms with is saying that, hey, this bothered me. I'm struggling with that. That's not weakness. And the younger generation of going, yeah, no, this is not cool. I'm not okay with this. I do think there are some lessons that we can learn. You know, you see the shirt. As a matter of fact, I had it on the cover of the book of it's okay to not be okay. Is it really? We've made it that way. So I think we have to go back and kind of start deconstructing some stuff. I think some leaders need to start taking a hard look in the mirror, taking a hard look at themselves. You know, you take the drift system. Again, it's not perfect. It's not perfect at all. But people aren't signing up to do this job anymore. There's not waiting list of people wanting to come and work and come and do this. And it seems like the more years you do this, it seems like the worse stuff gets.
Yeah.
And we've got to take care. I don't like that expression of you know, you're in this alone or whatever. We have convinced ourselves that we are fighting alone.
Yes. Your brain tells you you're alone, but you're not alone.
No, and
Yep.
that was one of the funny things in the book. I was really worried because I got really open and honest about a lot of things that I blew up in my personal life, and I had this guy come to me after he read it, and he was just crying. And I'm like, dude, you okay? And he's like, I thought I was the only one who had been doing stuff like this and was blowing up things in my personal life. You let me see that I wasn't alone. And I've had a lot of people come to me and say, hey, you're a manager, you're a supervisor, you're a leader. You stepping up and saying, this is what I've struggled with has pushed us to start talking about stuff that bothers us. I think a thing and culturally that needs to change. I think leaders I think they need to show the human side.
Agree.
Yeah. And Travis, I just want to say we're out of time, but
Okay.
your episode was fantastic. I loved learning about the drift method. I'm going to use that. I'm a supervisor at my job. I'm going to use that for my people. And Jason, what's your last thoughts? I mean, he was amazing, but what do you have to say?
Man, I love it. I think it's all good. I feel like I could talk to you for another hour. To be honest with you,
I know.
I didn't
I feel
realize
like
I've
I've
we were
learned so
enjoyed
already
this.
much.
Yeah, I get so wrapped up in our conversations sometimes that I forget there's a clock up at the top. I should watch it.
Yeah, I didn't even realize it. I was like, oh, wait, there's a clock there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's all good though. So, Travis, tell us where we find you. Like, where do we find you? Where do we find the book? And what's next for you in this season as you guys grow the Between the Tones family?
So I guess the easiest way to find me is betweenthetones.org. That's our website. You can find the book there. If you buy the book from me, $5 of every purchase of the book goes to Thanks for Service, which is the 501c3 nonprofit for Rock of Refuge Counseling Center that helps first responders offset costs for therapy. The book is available on Amazon. Well, I'm on the TikTok. I think it's Between the Tones. I struggle with this whole technology thing.
Same.
The woodworking business and stuff, that's at betweenthetones.org and a lot of the stuff that we're making. So what's next for us? I want to continue to push the book, continue to push the drift system. Anybody that wants information on the drift system, we offer a complete class, 4-hour, 8-hour, and then we're working on a train the trainer project. Probably one of the biggest things that I'm the most excited about, and it's something that Morgan is working on. And again, I said our daughter Olivia, she's 10, she's on the autism spectrum. And man, I'm gonna tell you what, I wish so many people could just experience how she views the world and how she just moves through life. But Morgan has a huge passion for kids. We're actually in the early stages of developing a children's book series that is geared toward kids 9 to 12 who are kids of first responders. That way, moms and dads can read this book to them. And it's not necessarily about this guy wants to be a fireman, this guy wants to be a paramedic. We use the term in our house of big emotions, of we're having big emotion day and just need a big squeeze or whatever. But this is a book that can help parents who are first responders read to their kids. That way that their kids can begin to understand that if dad comes home or mom comes home, maybe it's been a big emotion day, and to help them. So that's something that's in the works.
Wow.
That's
And
awesome.
I'm also working on a kind of a book idea. I actually have 2 other ones. One is on church hurt. And healing, and healing from that. And then the second one is just kind of a memoir from a bunch of different people who have completely collapsed but have come back and what their journey looked like. So
we'll have
Good
to
stuff.
keep updated on you.
yes,
Yeah,
and we will be
absolutely.
at 2 of the next Pierce Foundation's mental wellness summits. We'll be in Greenville and we'll be in Asheville.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Good for you. Do you have any questions for us?
No, I absolutely love what y'all are doing, and I'm so glad to see that Kevin is doing better.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is.
So
Well, you know what?
MaKayla, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Please got a question.
I do have a
Yeah.
question for you guys. What's one thing that y'all wish somebody had told y'all 20, 30 years ago in your career that would make a pivotal impact in how you view things today?
Do you want me to answer first?
Sure.
Go ahead, MaKayla.
I've been a nurse for 10 years, and I've been through my own series of burnout. And I just want new providers who are training new nurses to know, if you're burnout, you should not be training someone else. If you
That's
are
good.
burnout, you are going to make that person immediately burn out and not want to be there and do your job. Negativity spreads, happiness spreads too. So
Man,
like
that's good stuff. I've seen that firsthand. I think we all have to some degree. So it's great stuff. My answer is, we touched on it earlier. I wish somebody would have told me way earlier in my career that you are not what you do. You're not defined by this job. This is not your identity. You have an identity outside of this. So don't get caught in that trap that this is all that there is to your life. I mean, that's why there's a reason why we see suicide rates among retirees as high as they are.
Yep.
They're
And you know
walking
what?
away without that identity.
that is something nobody prepared me for. I've been gone 2.5 months. I still struggle to sleep at night.
Yeah.
But
It'll come.
We're getting there.
Yeah, it'll come. Cool.
And you
Well,
said
thanks
you
for
had one
asking that.
last
It's a good question. Yeah, my
Jason?
question was for MaKayla. MaKayla, where do we find A Silent War Within?
A Silent War Within, if you want to follow us, is on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. If you watch on YouTube or Spotify, you can see mine and Jason's and Travis's beautiful faces. And anywhere else you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcast, all the things. Are you ready for my credit card voice?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Been
Okay.
waiting all day for it.
This is kind of a joke at the end of the sign off. I always have to do my Delilah or my operator, phone voice. For those who are too young to know who that is, don't worry about it. All right, guys, I've enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much. I hope you join us next week on A Silent War Within. And for now, be safe, take care of your mind, and we will talk soon. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
You've been listening to A Silent War Within. If this episode resonated, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, you're not alone and your well-being matters. It's time to end this silent war.